Bullying in the workplace is not always loud. It is not always fists slamming tables, shouting voices, or open insults. More often it is quiet. A cutting remark in a meeting, a colleague who dismisses your contribution with a smirk, a manager who takes your ideas but gives credit to someone else, or that cold silence in the lunchroom when you walk in and conversations suddenly stop. Each of these moments, small on the surface, can carry the weight of humiliation. They linger in the mind. You replay them during your commute home, and even at night, lying in bed, you feel your body tighten again, as if the scene is happening all over. Workplace bullying is corrosive, not just to careers, but to the human spirit. It is not the single insult that destroys you, but the way repeated dismissals accumulate like drops of acid, wearing down confidence until you begin to doubt your own abilities. So let's imagine this. You are in a meeting. You've prepared carefully, slides in order, voice steady. You present your idea. Halfway through, your colleague interrupts. "That's been done before. We should move on." The room grows quiet. Your face flushes. Your heart races. You want to lash back, to defend your worth in front of everyone, but deep inside, something trembles. The fear that perhaps they're right, that maybe you're not good enough. And this is the cruelest effect of bullying. It makes you question yourself, as if the insult were evidence, not opinion. This is where the true damage lies. Not in the words themselves, but in the way they strike at your hidden insecurities. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the part of us we don't want to face. Marcus Aurelius, though centuries earlier, faced the same truth. Our minds, not external insults, determine our suffering. What others say may be cruel, but it is the silent agreement within us, "Yes, maybe I am worthless," that delivers the final blow. Bullying also thrives because workplaces often reward aggression disguised as confidence. The person who interrupts may be praised for being direct. The manager who takes credit may be seen as strategic. Meanwhile, the quieter voices, the ones carrying the weight of true effort, are ignored. Over time, the culture itself becomes a silent accomplice to bullying, and so the victim not only fights against individuals but against an entire system that normalizes disrespect. So here is the real question. When bullied, belittled, or dismissed at work, how do we respond? Do we surrender to anger and humiliation, or do we rise above? Do we allow the shadow within us to take control, turning pain into rage? Or do we pause and examine what is really happening? What would Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor who trained himself daily to master anger, do in such moments? He would remind himself that the insult is not the wound, the judgment is. He would treat the workplace bully as a teacher, revealing the parts of himself still unsettled, still vulnerable, still in need of discipline. This is the question we'll explore. To understand how Marcus learned to never get angry or bothered by workplace bullying, we must look first at the roots of the problem, not in the office politics or the bully's character, but in the mind's hidden reactions. Because until we see that, we will always be vulnerable to the next cutting remark, the next stolen idea, the next dismissive smirk. Workplace bullying thrives on triggers. The bully's remark alone is not enough to destroy your peace. The real force comes from the way it collides with something already inside you. A single word might seem harmless in isolation, but when it strikes the raw nerve of self-doubt, it multiplies in power. The insult becomes an echo chamber, amplifying what you already fear about yourself. Without that hidden vulnerability, the remark would pass like wind against stone. With it, the word becomes a blade that cuts deeper than intended. Think about Sarah, a marketing manager who felt crushed when her idea was dismissed. It wasn't just Tom's words, it was the echo of her lifelong fear of being invisible, overlooked, or unworthy. His sentence, delivered in seconds, awakened years of silence and a childhood spent doubting her own voice. That is why she could not simply shrug it off. It did not touch her mind alone. It touched her history and reopened wounds she thought had healed. In the workplace, we tie our value tightly to performance, recognition, and approval. Every report, every meeting, every moment seems like a test of worth. When someone mocks us, it feels like they're not just attacking an idea but our very identity. The promotion we didn't get, the email that went unanswered, the joke whispered behind our back. All of it fuels the suspicion that maybe we are not enough. This is why bullying cuts so deeply. It awakens the shadow of inadequacy that lives within, forcing us to confront the fragile parts of ourselves we try to hide. Yet the roots of workplace bullying are not only personal, but also structural. One cause lies in organizational culture. When companies reward aggression under the label of confidence, or when leaders confuse domination with leadership, they create fertile ground for bullying. In such environments, people who interrupt, belittle, or take credit are not corrected. They are promoted. This silent approval sends a message. Cruelty is a strategy for advancement. Another cause stems from insecurity in the bully themselves. Many who lash out are driven by fear of being exposed as inadequate, fear of losing relevance, fear of not measuring up. Instead of addressing their own shadows, they project them onto others. They dismiss Sarah's idea not because it is worthless, but because deep down, they are terrified it might outshine their own. A further cause lies in power imbalances. When one person controls opportunities, promotions, or access to resources, the temptation to abuse that position is strong. If there are no checks, no culture of accountability, bullying becomes a tool to maintain dominance. Victims stay silent because speaking up feels dangerous, while bystanders look away to protect themselves. Silence, too, is a root of the problem. Technology has added another dimension. Bullying is no longer confined to conference rooms or cafeterias. It seeps into emails written with subtle hostility, group chats where exclusion is deliberate, or social media posts that mock indirectly. The office follows you home and the boundaries blur. The mental weight grows heavier because escape feels impossible. Marcus would recognize all these dynamics immediately. In Meditations, he reminds himself daily that others act from their own ignorance, fear, and weakness. To him, the insult is not an objective truth. It is only noise, the outward sign of another person's struggle. He teaches that the insult itself is powerless. What matters is the judgment we attach to it. If Sarah believes Tom's words define her, she hands him control over her soul. If she remembers that his dismissal reflects his blindness, not her worth, she keeps her freedom intact. The Stoic view strips away illusion. The real injury is not the comment, but the meaning we assign to it. A harsh word cannot by itself lower your value. It is your silent agreement, yes, this proves I am small, that delivers the wound. Marcus would say, break that agreement. Refuse to let the mind transform an opinion into a verdict. The root, then, is not the bully's voice, but the silent contract we sign inside ourselves. Until that contract is broken, every slight will reopen the wound. Once we see this clearly, bullying loses its grip. It becomes not a verdict on our worth, but a mirror reflecting our own unfinished work. And this recognition leads us to the next question. If the root lies within, how can we train ourselves to meet the insult with calm instead of collapse? When the root lies within, how can we train ourselves to meet the insult with calm instead of collapse? Marcus reminds us that preparation is the shield against insult. By expecting the flaws of others, we remove their power to shock us. Each slight becomes a lesson, each dismissal a test of steadiness. Marcus Aurelius would begin not with retaliation, but with stillness. The Stoic discipline is to pause between stimulus and response. When insulted, Marcus would remind himself, this is not about me, but about the weakness in the other. That pause is not a sign of weakness, but of strength, because it shows that the mind refuses to be commanded by another's cruelty. In the Stoic sense, victory is not silencing the bully, but refusing to be enslaved by anger. In a modern workplace, this discipline takes shape through deliberate choices. The first choice is to create space. When a colleague tries to humiliate you, resist the urge to snap back. Take 3 seconds. Breathe. Let the initial surge of adrenaline pass without dictating your behavior. In those seconds, you reclaim control over yourself. And that control is everything. Without it, the bully writes your script. With it, you remain the author of your own actions. The second choice is to examine the source. Why does this sting? If it hurts, it is because it touches a wound in you. The insult is only the spark. The fire is already within. By naming this shadow, you reduce its grip. Instead of saying, "They humiliated me," you say, "I felt fear of being humiliated." That distinction shifts the power back to you, because you can work on your fear, but you cannot control their behavior. The third choice is to set boundaries calmly. Marcus would not allow bullying to continue unchecked. His calmness was never passivity. He would assert himself with clarity, but without rage. Imagine responding with a steady voice. "I appreciate feedback, but dismissing ideas without discussion doesn't help the team." No shouting, no bitterness, just a clear line. The strength of a boundary lies not in volume, but in consistency. The fourth choice is to apply what could be called the criticism filter. Not every insult is true, but even hostile words can contain a fragment of truth. Separate fact from malice. If a colleague calls your work sloppy, do not accept the insult as a verdict. Instead, ask if there is something in your work that can be improved. Learn from the fact, discard the malice. This way, even cruelty becomes raw material for growth. The fifth choice is to release resentment. Marcus would see holding a grudge as poisoning himself. The Stoics taught that anger injures the angry more than the offender. By letting go, you are not excusing the bully, but protecting your mind from corrosion. To carry resentment is to allow the insult to live inside you long after the bully has forgotten it. Releasing it is an act of freedom. The sixth choice is to practice gratitude. After a difficult meeting, instead of replaying insults, Marcus would recall what remains intact: his principles, his progress, his integrity. Gratitude is not denial, it is balance. It reminds you that one person's words cannot erase years of effort, cannot undo the virtues you cultivate daily. By remembering what is good, you shrink the shadow cast by what is hostile. Taken together, these choices transform the workplace into a training ground for virtue. Every insult becomes an opportunity to practice mastery over the self. Every cutting remark becomes a test of steadiness. The office, often a place of rivalry and ego, becomes instead a place to exercise patience, courage, and clarity. This is how Marcus Aurelius would respond to workplace bullying, not with retaliation, but with reasoned discipline. He would treat each insult as a mirror, showing him where his inner work remains unfinished. And by practicing in this way, he would ensure that no bully holds the key to his peace. The insult does not vanish, but it loses its power because the soul refuses to bend. And so the question naturally follows: if the office can be turned into a training ground for virtue, what does that reveal about the Stoic path itself? It suggests that every environment, no matter how hostile, can become an arena for the strengthening of character. This recognition leads us forward into the deeper Stoic analysis of why control over our judgments matters more than control over any external event. The world is all experience, not thoughts. The Stoic worldview is simple but radical. Events are neutral. What happens outside us has no inherent weight. It is only our judgment, our interpretation, that paints events as good or bad. This is why the Stoics placed such emphasis on training perception, because perception is the first gate to freedom or slavery. Bullying is a sharp test of this truth. The insult or slight is not the real wound. It is only a sound, an action, a movement of another person's ignorance. The real danger is when we grant it entry, when we let it define who we are. If we believe their judgment of us, then we become their captives. If we remember that their act belongs to them, not to us, we remain free. Marcus Aurelius captured this discipline in a single line: choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been. This is the Stoics' shield. It does not deny the presence of cruelty, but it denies cruelty the power to govern our soul. The insult has no command unless we supply it with agreement. In the workplace, this stance is easily misunderstood. Stoicism does not mean that we endure abuse in silence or submit passively to injustice. It means we refuse to surrender our peace while we act. We confront misconduct when necessary. We set boundaries. We protect our integrity, but we do it without rage, without allowing the bully to drag us into their chaos. We meet disorder with order, not with further disorder. The Stoic trains for this daily. Each morning, Marcus reminded himself, "Today I will meet arrogance, rudeness, dishonesty." He expected the flaws of others so that their behavior never took him by surprise. Preparation stripped the insult of its shock, and without shock, there was no loss of composure. The insult still sounded, but it did not find a home inside him. To act in this way is to remember the citadel within. Marcus called the mind a fortress, one that cannot be breached unless we open the gate ourselves. Bullying is nothing more than a test of those gates. If the walls are strong, built by reason, reinforced by reflection, guarded by virtue, no attack reaches the core. If the walls are weak, even a careless word collapses them. The work of Stoicism is to strengthen this fortress every day. Therefore, the real battlefield is not the office floor, not the conference room, not the email thread. It is the inner citadel of the mind. Every time we face insult and choose not to let it master us, the walls grow stronger. Every time we yield to anger or despair, the walls weaken. Stoicism calls us to discipline in these moments, to see clearly that the battle is always within. And once we understand this, the question is no longer, how do I stop the bully? But how do I guard my judgment? For when judgment is guarded, the bully has no victory. And from this insight, we turn naturally to the next step, the practice of training perception itself, so that even in the storm, the citadel remains unshaken. From Marcus's example, we can distill clear practices that move Stoicism from words on a page into tools for daily survival. They are not lofty theories reserved for philosophers. They are habits that allow a person to remain steady in the middle of hostility. Each practice is a discipline, a form of inner training that protects the mind from being conquered by anger or despair. The first discipline is self-awareness. When triggered, the instinct is to lash out or retreat into silence. But Marcus reminds us that the mind must first name what it feels: anger, shame, fear. By naming the emotion, you create distance from it. The feeling is real, but it is not identical with you. This act of recognition weakens its hold because you shift from being inside the storm to observing the storm from the outside. To say, "I feel anger," is to acknowledge a visitor. To say, "I am anger," is to surrender your throne. The first preserves freedom, the second loses it. Then comes the 3-second pause. This simple delay between stimulus and response is one of the most powerful Stoic practices. Marcus would describe it as the space where reason has a chance to breathe. In those 3 seconds, you can choose whether to let the bully dictate your action or to act from principle. The pause may seem small, but it is a declaration of sovereignty. It proves that you are not a puppet of external events, but the governor of your own mind. This pause is the doorway to virtue. Next is the practice of setting healthy boundaries. Stoicism is not about enduring everything without resistance. Marcus wrote often about the importance of living in harmony with reason, and reason demands that we respect ourselves. To state your limits calmly without hostility is an act of dignity. Saying no to mistreatment is not a loss of virtue, but a confirmation of it. The boundary is not a wall of bitterness, it is a line of clarity. It communicates both self-respect and fairness. In this way, boundaries are not obstacles to harmony, but conditions that make harmony possible. Criticism, too, becomes part of training. Even unfair feedback can be used as material for growth if handled with discipline. Marcus consistently examined his own faults and sought correction, even from unpleasant sources. To extract the lesson and discard the poison is to turn the bully's attack into your own advantage. What was meant as harm becomes fuel for strength. The Stoic mind converts hostility into practice, much as a soldier converts hardship into readiness. To ignore all criticism is arrogance. To accept it blindly is weakness. The wise path is to filter, to take what serves growth and leave what belongs to malice. Letting go is equally vital. A grudge is a weight carried not by the offender, but by the offended. To hold on to resentment is to keep reopening the wound. Marcus would say that the offense has already occurred. Why allow it to injure you again and again in memory? By releasing it, you do not excuse the act, you simply deny it further power. This choice restores lightness to the mind. It is not indulgence, it is discipline. To let go is to claim the present moment back from the grip of the past. To forgive in this sense is not to approve, but to free yourself from change you did not choose. The gratitude reset is the closing practice. At the end of the day, Marcus would reflect on what he still possessed: his integrity, his reason, his ability to act justly. Gratitude shifts the attention from what others tried to take to what cannot be taken. It reminds us that peace comes not from the absence of insult, but from the presence of inner strength. To end each day with gratitude is to close the door on bitterness before it enters the night with you. Gratitude is not denial, it is perspective. It reminds us that one voice of hostility does not erase a lifetime of effort. These practices are not abstract ideals. They are survival skills for anyone navigating a toxic workplace. They guard against the erosion of dignity, against the slow corrosion of confidence that bullying seeks to cause. Practiced consistently, they transform the office into a training ground for virtue, where every insult is repurposed into an exercise of mastery. The bully provides the spark, but the Stoic provides the meaning. Every confrontation is a classroom, every harsh word a lesson, every setback a chance to strengthen the inner citadel. And this leads naturally to the next reflection. If such practices can steady us in hostile workplaces, what does that say about the broader path of Stoicism? It shows that the philosophy is not limited to extraordinary crises, but is woven into the fabric of ordinary days. The disciplines Marcus lived by remain available to anyone willing to practice. The question then is not whether insults and setbacks will come, they will, but whether we will meet them with discipline or with surrender. The answer determines not only how we endure work, but how we preserve freedom of the mind itself. Workplace bullying is not rare. Studies show nearly half of employees report some form of mistreatment, from exclusion to verbal abuse. These are not minor inconveniences. In a world where careers are tied so closely to identity, these wounds cut into dignity, self-worth, and belonging. They linger beyond office walls, following people into their commutes, their homes, and their sleep. When a workplace becomes hostile, it does not simply affect productivity. It shakes the very foundation of who we believe we are. What Marcus Aurelius offers is not escapism, but empowerment. Stoicism does not tell us to pretend that pain is unreal. It shows us how to face pain without surrender. Instead of allowing external chaos to define us, Stoicism equips us with tools that redirect focus inward, where freedom is found. These tools are not abstract theories. They are practices designed to be lived, tested, and refined in the ordinary trials of daily life. The first practice is the shadow journal. When an insult or slight leaves a sting, Marcus would advise not to ignore it but to write it down. Describe the trigger. Was it exclusion in a meeting, a sarcastic remark, or the theft of credit for your work? Then probe deeper. What wound did it touch? Fear of being invisible? Fear of being incompetent? By recording these insights, you uncover the shadow, the unacknowledged part of yourself that makes insults feel fatal. To see it clearly is to weaken its power. The second practice is the 3-second pause. Reactivity is the bully's trap. Anger bursts out before reason has time to intervene. But Marcus trained himself to pause, even briefly. 3 seconds of silence can feel small, but it is enough to regain sovereignty. In that pause, you breathe, you return to principle, and you remember that the insult belongs to them, not to you. This micro-technique is the hinge on which freedom turns. The third practice is the boundary blueprint. Stoicism is not about passively absorbing abuse. Marcus reminds us that virtue includes justice, and justice requires that we respect ourselves. Boundaries, stated calmly, are the way we guard our integrity. It may sound like, I appreciate feedback, but dismissing my work without discussion undermines the team. Such statements do not lash out, but they draw a line that protects dignity. Boundaries are shields carried with composure, not swords swung with rage. Next comes the criticism filter. Words can wound, but sometimes they also contain truth. The Stoic must learn to separate fact from venom. If someone calls your work sloppy, ask whether there is something you can improve. Keep the lesson, discard the malice. Marcus constantly sought correction, even from those who disliked him. This practice turns hostility into training, converting attacks into material for growth. The release ritual is another essential discipline. To carry a grudge is to chain yourself to the offender. Marcus would remind himself that the offense has already occurred. Why replay it endlessly in the mind? To release is not to excuse, but to set down a heavy stone that was never yours to carry. Visualization helps. Imagine dropping the weight, imagine walking lighter. This act restores freedom. Finally, the gratitude reset anchors the day. At night, Marcus reflected on what remained intact. His reason, his ability to act justly, his integrity. Gratitude shifts focus from what was threatened to what cannot be taken. Even in hostile environments, there is still progress, still growth, still virtues to practice. Gratitude protects against bitterness, reminding us that peace is always within reach. These tools are timeless because they address the unchanging human condition. Technology evolves, offices evolve, but the struggle for dignity remains. Bullying may take new forms, an email, a message, a public dismissal, but the Stoic disciplines remain as relevant as ever. They do not eliminate cruelty, but they eliminate cruelty's power to control us. Why is Stoicism the right path today? Because it arms individuals with unshakable inner strength in environments where power can be abused. It teaches us not to depend on the fairness of others for our peace of mind. By refusing to let external chaos dictate our inner world, we stand firm in freedom. In the corporate jungle, Stoicism is not a philosophy of retreat. It is both shield and compass. A shield that protects dignity from insult, and a compass that points toward justice, reason, and integrity. Through these disciplines, we are not only surviving toxic workplaces, we are training the soul to remain free, no matter how turbulent the world becomes. Workplace bullying will not vanish. There will always be those who seek power through intimidation, who mask their weakness by belittling others. Some use authority as a weapon, others hide behind sarcasm or exclusion. But Marcus Aurelius reminds us that they do not hold the keys to our peace. They may control positions, resources, or even reputations, but they cannot command the citadel of the mind unless we grant them entry. This is the core Stoic insight. External actions may touch the body, but only our judgments can wound the soul. The real battlefield, then, is within. Marcus wrote that if you choose not to be harmed, you remain unharmed. The insult itself has no force until we clothe it in meaning. To reclaim control over our judgments is to rise above the bully's reach. Their words may sting in the moment, but when examined with reason, they reveal more about their weakness than about our worth. By holding fast to this principle, we refuse to become their puppet. To live this truth requires practice. Setting boundaries is the first discipline. Without them, resentment grows. With them, respect is established. Boundaries spoken calmly carry greater strength than anger because they are rooted in self-respect, not reactivity. When Marcus counseled himself to act in accord with reason, he was preparing for moments just like this, when silence would mean surrender, but rage would mean defeat. Boundaries drawn with composure keep dignity intact. Reframing criticism is another discipline. Even when delivered with malice, feedback can contain fragments of truth. The Stoic does not reject criticism outright, nor does he swallow it whole. He separates fact from venom, learns what can be useful, and discards the rest. In this way, even the bully becomes an unwitting teacher, providing opportunities for self-examination. Marcus turned every trial into material for growth. We can do the same. Letting go is equally essential. To cling to resentment is to carry poison. The bully moves on, but we remain chained to memory. Marcus teaches us that what has already occurred belongs to the past. To relive it endlessly is to let it injure us again and again. The act of release is not indulgence, but strength, the discipline of refusing to let bitterness lodge in the soul. By letting go, we walk lighter, freer, and more present. Gratitude seals the practice. At the end of each day, Marcus reflected on what remained unshaken: his reason, his principles, his ability to act justly. Gratitude shifts the gaze from what was threatened to what cannot be taken. No bully can steal integrity. No insult can erase virtue. By recalling these truths, we anchor ourselves in what endures, not in what fades. Gratitude is the reminder that even in hostile environments, life offers opportunities to grow in strength and wisdom. This is the privilege Marcus spoke of, to become who you truly are. Not who the bully says you are, not who fear whispers you are, but who you choose to be when tested. To live with inner freedom in the face of outer hostility is the mark of a Stoic life. So the next time you face bullying at work, remember, your response is your power. You are not their puppet. You are the master of yourself. To meet hostility with calm, to meet cruelty with discipline, to meet insult with reason, this is victory. If this message resonates with you, share your story in the comments. Have you faced bullying, and how did you keep your peace? Your words may guide someone else through the same fire, reminding them that they are not alone in the struggle. And if you wish to continue walking this path of wisdom, discipline, and inner freedom, subscribe to Sophoria. Together we will learn how Stoicism can transform not just the workplace, but every corner of our lives. Philosophy is not a retreat, but a practice, a shield against despair and a compass toward virtue. Stay grounded, stay authentic, stay unbothered.